And I just died laughing. I thought that scene, the funniest scene in this episode, the funniest scene here in season 3. Hi guys, Geecher64 here, and today we're talking about the Orville New Horizons, episode 3, titled Mortality Paradox. And I've got to say, the humor is back in this episode. I've said this in my review of the previous 2 episodes, that I'm sure the humor would work its way back into the series. I know a lot of people seem to be missing the humor from the last 2 episodes, and I said that the last 2 episodes didn't lend themselves well to humor because of their darker storytelling, with the first one's heavy subject matter, and then the second one being a horror aspect that's, you know, there's not really a whole lot of room for humor. So there is some more humor in this episode, and it's also a mystery episode, which I actually liked a lot. Again, big thank you to everyone out there who's checked out my Orville videos, my 3rd ever Orville video. It's a new thing I've been talking about on the channel, so I'm really happy with the positive reception, and I love seeing other Orville fans in the comment section. So really, I've just been surprised about it, and I just want to say thank you once again. For those new here, the way that I do my reviews is I kind of do a breakdown of the episode, and I share my thoughts on like specific plot points and things like that, and give you a obviously partial part of my review as I'm going through it. In the end, I kind of give you a more full review with a recap and some of my final thoughts on the episodes, which is really the meat of the review, I think. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the episode. So Cali returns to the Orville from some shore leave and is talking to Grayson and tells her that she detected a Kalon signature in a system not too far away and found it to be pretty worrying. And this really sets up the beginning of the mystery of this episode. So as the Orville's traveling along, they end up detecting electromagnetic emissions from a planet called Neuron 1, and this is supposed to be a barren planet, a lifeless planet. So the fact they're detecting emissions on the planet makes them obviously want to investigate. There are explorers after all. And so when they get to the planet, they detect multiple cities and billions of life forms on the surface of this planet that, according to all Union records, is lifeless. And according to their own experiences, it's supposed to be lifeless. So the fact that they see billions of life forms on the planet is, yeah, pretty suspect. So they got to investigate because they are explorers after all. So Captain Mercer, Grayson, Bortis, Cali, and Malloy go down to investigate. I know some people have said there wasn't enough Bortis or Malloy in the first 2 episodes, so we're getting a little bit more Bortis than Malloy here, which is part of the reason why I think episode 3 is my favorite out of the first 3 episodes. But so they all go down, and they leave Ensign Burke in charge, and which I thought was strange. I was like, you're going to leave Ensign Burke in charge of the Orville? And I thought maybe that was going to come into play this episode, but it didn't come into play at all. As a matter of fact, like, I think within a minute of screen time, you see Lamar on the bridge, and he is stand-in captain while the whole away team is gone. Also, I got to say, I really like the new shuttle pods. The old shuttle pods were pretty basic looking, and that was obviously due, I think, to money constraints. Clearly, they got a little bit more money in the budget, and they updated production value on this season. This is easily, as far as a production standpoint, the best out of the 3, not even close. And the new shuttles kind of look like Raptors from Battlestar Galactica, so that's kind of cool. I just figured I'd mention it. I didn't mention it in my other reviews, and you see some the shuttle pods here, so I figured I'd go ahead and mention it. So when they land on the planet, where the city's supposed to be, the city's not there. It's just like endless forest, just a bunch of trees. But you know, there's no city, as their scan said, and there's not supposed to be trees either because it's supposed to be a barren, lifeless planet. So that's also just as weird. So the mystery continues to deepen. Then they detect hundreds of life forms in another part of the forest. So they walk through the forest and they come across a high school from the 21st century in the middle of this forest. And the scans from the Orville up above, because they're still in communication, don't read the school at all. They just read the trees and the plant life, which again, there's not even supposed to be that. There sure isn't supposed to be a school in the middle of the forest. So when the team walks into school, they are cut off from communications in the Orville, and then they are locked in the school, which is probably a lot of students feel. I remember feeling that way when I was in school. And Cali can't break the doors, so it's obviously some kind of technology or some supernatural something or other that's keeping her, because she can't break the doors, and the phasers don't seem to have any effect either. It's almost like they dissipate, like there's a shield or something up. So there's no way out.
You're going nowhere.
Then the bell rings and a bunch of students end up filling the hallway, and everyone seems to be normal humans. They have conversations like they're normal humans, or at least normal students from the 21st century, which is weird. And you even get a funny line with Malloy where he pulls off one of the kids off to the side and is like, hey, what year is it? And the kid's like, what are you, high? And he's like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. See, the humor's still around, and honestly, with the humans walking around and seeming normal, and just the mystery is continuing to ramp up at this point. Back on the Orville, you do get a confrontation between Burke and Isaac. Burke, they introduced this character at the beginning of this season, and I said I wanted to see more of Burke in the season, and we are getting more of Burke in the season. But what I meant by that is I wanted to see more of her distrust of Isaac play out, and her eventual overcoming of her distrust of Isaac. You don't get that in this episode. You don't get it here, but you just get more of their confrontation, more of Burke's distrust, because she throws all logic out the window when dealing with Isaac, because Isaac just points out, hey, if you send out another away team to go check on the shuttle, the same thing might befall them. So he could be putting 2 shuttles in danger and 2 away teams in danger. And she just reads that as just screw the landing party, don't do anything, which obviously is completely illogical. Back in the school, you got Bortis and Cali. They just walk into a classroom while they're teaching history, and the teacher's like, what are you doing here? And Bortis says, looking for a way out. And the teacher just says, you should talk to a guidance counselor about that. See, the humor is still here, guys. It's just not the same kind of humor. And I think this kind of humor in the episodes in which it fits in, such as this, work well. And I prefer this style of humor that doesn't undercut tension or do anything to interfere with the plot. I prefer this style of humor, just kind of funny lines with our characters. So some bullies like jump Malloy and throw him in a bathroom, just beat the crap out of him, and they demand that he pay someone named Randall. And this is why you're supposed to have a buddy system, because he was walking off by himself, Malloy was, when he got jumped by these guys. You need a buddy system. Buddy! Especially in this scenario, like you're on an away mission, you're trapped in some weird place, and you just walk off by yourself. Not a smart move by Malloy here. So he gets jumped and beaten up. And I did think it was kind of funny. He didn't really try and fight back. He didn't throw a punch or do anything. He didn't try and pull his phaser on him or anything. He just kind of just took the beating, which I thought was kind of strange. But it also did a good job of the scene itself worked, because it was very jarring, because you basically have this kind of goofy setting where you have our characters thrown in a 21st century, high school, and, they're just kind of mystery. Let's try and figure out what's happening. And all of a sudden he's getting the crap kicked out of him, and he's really hurt from it. So, and also because he gets hurt from it, they realize that, they could be injured in this hallucination or whatever this is. They could be injured and they could be killed. And that's obviously not a good thing. There was some more humor with Bortis in the lunchroom, because they're going to want to sit at the table. They're trying to ask some of the kids in this lunchroom to try and get some more information on this person, Randall, and just kind of poke around and try and figure out what's actually happening here. And some popular girls won't let Bortis sit down at the table. So Bortis just says to one of the girls that she has a 5 head. But you have a 5 head. And I was thinking this Randall person was going to play a big part in the mystery. And so do our characters. They think that's part of the reason why they're poking around. But Randall instead turns out to be a beast. He's a Rancor crossed with a cave troll with an axe. So our guys end up fighting Randall the cave troll out on the football field. And, the effects were okay when you take into consideration it's a TV show. There was a couple parts where it actually worked a lot better than other parts, specifically with scaling. I think that with this, there was some scaling issues, and there was some effects problems, and that he felt very separated from the environment in a couple parts. But I think it worked perfectly well and was sufficient for what they were going for. But I don't know, it just was kind of jarring to see Randall turn out to be a cave troll. And when Randall grabs Malloy and is like throwing him up in the air, it looks like he's gonna, eat him or something. Malloy thinks he's gonna die, and as he thinks he's gonna die, his eyes glaze over. They kind of gray out for a second. And Malloy explains this as being feeling like some kind of out-of-body experience. The away team gets away from Randall and runs back into the school, but the school is no longer there. They're now on a plane at night in a storm, flying through the air. So yeah, so the mystery deepens. Then we cut back to Orville, and Finn and Isaac are going to go down a planet to see what happened with the away team because, again, they have no communication. They show up on the planet, and it is the desolate rock that it's supposed to be, that by all the Union records and everything else, there's not supposed to be anything there. And there's no sign of the landing party, just an empty shuttle. Back on the plane, we're hitting turbulence, and Malloy points out that the pilots seem to be purposely making the ride rough. The weather should not be making the plane ride as rough as it is. Finally, after some heavy turbulence, the away team's just like, all right, we're going to bust into the cockpit and see what's happening here with these pilots here. And they bust in, and there's no pilots. There's nobody piloting the airplane. See? They should have went with autopilot. Honestly, I laughed out loud, and it was the funniest part of this episode was when the stewardess is screaming at them to get back to their seats constantly. As we've seen, there's nobody piloting the airplane. Like, are you insane? There's nobody piloting this thing. And she's just freaking out, telling them to go back to their seats. And Grayson just turns around and knocks her out cold, and I just died laughing. I thought that scene, the funniest scene in this episode, the funniest scene here in season 3 is Grayson knocking out the stewardess. So the plane ends up going down. That's right there, out of fuel, coincidentally, as well as being hit by lightning and turbulence and everything else. So the plane's going down. There's nothing you can do. And as the plane's crashing, we get Mercer's eyes, Captain Mercer's eyes glazing over. They're grayed out as well, going through the same thing we saw with Malloy. And Captain Mercer does suffer a head injury on the crash, but they seem to have landed. They're okay. And they turn around and all the passengers have disappeared, including the stewardess who was knocked out cold. She's gone as well. And they leave out the exit door, and then they're transported to the next place. I would say this is the part where the mystery kind of hits its zenith. I think this is the height of the mystery, because when you compare where they're at now, which they are at now in a Mocklin morgue, is not quite as interesting as a mystery school that locks you in with force fields and seemingly normal humans going around, and then a cave troll trying to kill you, and then a plane crash. Like, those are far more interesting locations and events than being in a Mocklin morgue. There are a couple more transitions after this. I'm going to be getting into that here in a second. I'll talk more about this at the end. But for me, the rest of the transitions, this is the peak of it. The rest of the transition don't quite flow as well or maintain the same level of mystery for me personally. But I would be curious as to see what you guys think. But again, stick around, because as I go through the breakdown, I'm going to give more of my individual thoughts on those things and also in my recap. So don't comment, just let. Wait till I get to the end of the video. And one of the bodies in the morgue is Bortis. So dead Bortis chokes alive Bortis, and his eyes glaze over again, and he has the same experience as Malloy and Captain Mercer. So you got all this stuff building out now. Then after the Mocklin morgue, they find themselves on an endless staircase, and it looks really cool visually. Not much happens outside the fact that it just kind of looks cool, because it just leads to the next transition, because then they end up on Zalea, and there's a flashing light across the lake, and it just so happens to be a raft sitting there. And once again, the path is laid out. They whatever it is that's doing this, or whoever it is doing this, is definitely laying out a path of certain actions for them to take, and they just kind of go along with it. I thought they'd be questioning it at this point, but they don't. They're like, all right, well, let's take this raft to go across here and see what's happening with this light. There's a little bit of back and forth between Mercer and Grayson, with Grayson saying that she should go on the raft instead of Ed because of his injury. And that's what a good first officer should be doing, protecting the captain, especially when he's been injured. So that was good. So Malloy, Grayson, and Kiali take the raft across the lake, heading for the flashing light. And I did think it was strange that they split up, especially since the raft seemed to be big enough that they could probably fit all 5 people on it. It seemed kind of dumb at the time. And honestly, it was kind of strange, because we've seen what happens when you split up. Why would you split up this point? You don't even know what's happening. You should be sticking together as much as possible. So I thought that part was kind of goofy. And of course, as the raft is going across, there's a giant alien octopus that is right below the raft that pops up and grabs Grayson and drags her down underwater. Kiali ends up saving her, and the octopus just kind of gives up and floats away. It was kind of strange, but this whole episode is all about the mystery and strange things going on. So that part is very consistent. So they do get back to the shore. The whole team reunites. And then as they do, like, the steps start appearing in this rock formation up into a door. And Captain Mercer, finally, he's like, all right, no more transitions, no more going to the next place, no more following these paths that are laid out of us. We're done. We're not playing your games anymore. He just screams up at the air, I'm done. And honestly, I kind of wish they went through it because the door kind of looks like it might be a medieval setting. I thought it would be cool to see the Orville get thrown into like old knights or something like that and deal with that. I thought that'd be kind of funny. But, and that's also kind of the thing is some of the locations and things that they decide to put them in, scenarios they put them in, I just don't think are as interesting as the first two. So, and I'll get more into that in the end, like I said before. So they decide, all right, we're not going to go through this door. We're done. We're just going to walk away. So they just kind of just walk along the lake and into the forest. And they end up detecting a sophisticated holographic projector that's in a cave somewhere. Very convenient. I'm surprised they don't question this, but they don't. And they end up destroying it, and then they're back on the barren planet. They're back on the planet that's how it's supposed to appear. And so they're like, well, let's collect all the fragments of the projector and then head back to the Orville. Again, nobody really questions anything. And it's at this point, I'm like, me as the viewer, I'm like, obviously this is a bait and switch. Obviously it's a bait and switch. Like, I didn't even second guess the fact it was a bait and switch. And I was surprised that none of the characters, not one of them, questioned their reality after the confusion they just went on, that maybe this is real or maybe this is simulation. They don't seem to really question it. I thought it was kind of strange. So back on the Orville, Dr. Finn is explaining what the holographic simulation, how it worked, and how it used like some kind of, neurogenic scans and stuff like that to mess with their minds, to kind of explain the whole, near death, eyes glazing over experience. And then Isaac explains that the technology is Kalon, and it's supposed to be tying into what Kiali said earlier in the episode with Kalon being detected in the area. So it's tying back into what we saw within the first couple minutes of the episode. And as far as why the Kalon would want to do it, Captain Mercer basically says that. He says, if you can control someone's perception of reality, peaceful conquest is easy. Ponder that for a minute. So I get into contact with Admiral Halsey. Is going to send a Union convoy to the Orville to take the fragments that were discovered for further study. And then when that convoy shows up, Isaac says that the Union convoy is not the Union convoy, despite looking like the Union convoy. He says that they're the Kalon. And of course, Burke. We can always count on Burke to distrust Isaac. Sounds like a broken record, but yeah, anytime Isaac recommends something or says anything, you can count on Burke to try and shoot it down. And of course it's a Kalon. Of course it's the Kalon. And the Orville is just getting wrecked. It's getting attacked by the Kalon and pretty much getting destroyed. And then we cut back to the real world, which confirms many of us already knew that I figured out earlier. Obviously, this is going to be a bait and switch. I don't know why. Again, I don't know why nobody questioned this, but they come back to the real world. So even in a simulation, you can count on Ensign Burke to hate Isaac, even in a simulation. And then in the real world, Kiali is at a rendezvous point from where the Orville was supposed to go pick her up. And that's when we realized, oh, this part I didn't know. This part I wasn't aware of. I didn't suspect necessarily, which was that Kiali at the beginning of the episode was an imposter. It was Kiali the whole time. That was not actually Kiali that was there at the beginning of the episode. That was an imposter. Cutting back to the Kalon destroying the Orville in the simulation or whatever it is. It's obviously the Orville's outgunned and they're being completely destroyed. And, Captain Mercer's abandoned ship. And then the Kalon, one of the Kalon ships just makes a head-on collision in the Orville, and obviously everybody on the bridge is like, well, this is it, we're gone. And then all of a sudden everything freezes. And honestly, the best shot in this episode, my favorite shot in this episode, is this freeze frame, because it literally, the whole simulation halts with the Kalon vessel literally right in front of the Orville. And it's just my favorite looking scene in this episode, and probably my favorite looking scene so far in the show. That's when the imposter, Kiali, reveals herself to the rest of the away team and explains who she is, what she's doing, and why she's here. So we get to the explanation point, the mystery being solved, as the alien kind of explains it through exposition. Not Not the most original way to go, and I feel like this does take a little bit too long, but let's go through the explanation and I'll show you my thoughts with it. And this episode partially ties into a season 1 episode, the finale of season 1, titled Mad Idolatry, where Kelly accidentally ends up being involved in this alien culture and treated as a deity, and then that whole episode is them trying to deal with how to fix the damage that she made to this culture, because this planet appears in regular space every 11 days and advances 700 days in that time period, in their own time period. So it's revealed that this person is that alien race, and from their perspective, because it's been 2 years since that incident happened, 50,000 years have passed for this alien race, and now they're immortal. And all of the places that they envisioned or explained as being kind of like micro universes that were made out of their minds and the cultural data banks that they took from the Orville. And the whole reason why this alien did all this stuff was because she wanted to experience the moment of death from their perspective. Basically, that's what that was. It was kind of downloading their perception of death, because again, now this alien race is immortal, and they excuse making the away team lab rats by saying they weren't in any real danger, so it doesn't matter, which kind of sums up how disconnected this whole race of aliens is from the concept, because obviously there's psychological damage you can cause from what you just did, and not to mention the morality aspect, which I'll get into that here in a second. But this alien race seems to be most closely related to the concept of the Q, and the way that they're immortal, and they're both pompous. They're both pompous. This alien woman definitely came across as very pompous and arrogant, very condescending in the way that she talked to the crew. And she even says at one point Captain Mercer gets a gold star. I mean, it's all very condescending. And then she says, that they'll see her again. They'll see this alien race again. They're going to keep an eye on the humans and see what happens with them. And honestly, I would have liked it a lot better if Captain Mercer and the crew yelled, yelled at her, or at least explained it. Was angry at her for what they did, because it's quite obvious that this whole alien race, they may be immortal. But they've sacrificed their moral code. They don't really know what's right and wrong. They don't realize that what they just did to them was not right. And you would think that Captain Mercer and the crew would say something about it. I think it would have worked a lot better if you had both parties learning from each other, especially having this alien race being so condescending. Whenever she's talking to him, I feel like it would have been better if you had both parties in the end learn something from each other. I feel like the whole ending was not as impactful as it could have been. Honestly, I think the answer to the mystery that's laid out in the episode just wasn't as interesting as the mystery itself. I don't think that the solution and the resolution was as interesting as the mystery itself. I mean, it rarely is. But like I said, there were a couple things you could tweak to kind of make this work a little bit better. I think the mystery locations, I feel like there were some more interesting things that they could have done. Like I said, once they hit the Mocklin morgue, I feel like that was kind of the wall is it's like the previous things were so much more interesting than what you got after the Mocklin morgue. And with the ability to kind of take it in any direction and put our crew in any kind of random situation, regardless of time period or scenario, you could do anything you want, and you just have them in a Mocklin morgue where Bortis is choking them. I mean, you could argue that the whole idea of showing the morgue was kind of an allusion to the fact that the whole experiment was about death. I mean, you could certainly make that argument, but when you're watching it, you don't really know that's the point yet. So it's just like, hey, here's a plane crash and a cave troll, and then here's a Mocklin morgue. maybe if all of the Mocklin just came to life like zombies and started chasing them through the holes or something, that would have been more interesting. Just wasn't as interesting as I think it could have been. This episode reminded me of a few different Star Trek episodes. It reminded me of the Royale, which was a TNG episode where they randomly find themselves trapped in a 20th century hotel on a random planet in the middle of nowhere. Kind of reminded me of that one. It also reminded me of like Future Imperfect, which if you guys remember that episode, it was where Riker awakens like 16 years in the future, and turns out that it's all a simulation, and then he ends up in another simulation. And yeah, so it kind of reminded me of both of those kind of mashed up together. And an alien was also responsible for what happened in the Riker episode as well. And of course, the whole idea with this alien race and how the fact that they exist kind of in a different temporal plane of existence is very similar to the Voyager episode Blink of an Eye, which is one of my favorite Voyager episodes, in which the planet just exists outside of normal time. So you see civilizations rise and fall and evolve on that planet as well. So yeah, very familiar to some other Star Trek stuff. Again, I don't think that ruins anything. The fact that they pull some ideas from other Star Trek episodes is fine. Like, it's all in the execution and how it's delivered and what makes it engages the audience, and I think that it did that pretty well. I really like the fact that the plane crash was very reminiscent of the Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which is one of my favorite and probably the most popular, I think, Twilight Zone episodes, which just so happened to star William Shatner. So I thought that was kind of cool, and again, it kind of makes me wish that they would have continued on with the locations that had more tie-ins to that kind of thing. Maybe another tie-in to like maybe a Twilight Zone, or I don't know. Just the fact that you could do whatever you wanted, and they just didn't take it in as many interesting directions. Like I said, it just creatively, it felt like it hit a brick wall when they hit the Mocklin morgue. Again, that's just my opinion, but I am curious as to what you guys think, if you thought the same thing or not. And as I said before, humor's back in this episode, and I think it worked. I don't think it undercut the tension at all, and I liked it. I like this level of humor. I think this level of humor works really, really well. I know there's some fan base backlash on the lack of humor in the season so far, so hopefully this kind of gets some of those people back on board. I think this is the style of humor that works best with the Orville, because it isn't Star Trek. There, you do need a level of humor there, but this is the type of humor I would much rather see, as opposed to a lot of the humor we saw in season 1. I know it's not like a broken record saying that, but that's what I think about it. So, and I do like the fact that they tied this episode back into that season 1 episode. I thought that was a pretty smart move, something that I didn't really expect. But overall, I like this episode. I think this was my favorite of the 3 episodes so far, even with its faults. I think it's the strongest of the 3 episodes. I do think the second half wasn't as strong as the first half, but again, I really enjoyed it. I thought it worked pretty well for the most part. A couple things that I would change, a couple criticisms. Maybe the special effects on the cave troll could have been a little bit better. But overall, yeah, I did like it. The bait and switch, if I would have bought into the bait and switch, if I didn't suspect that it was a bait and switch when they get back to the planet, and it's really just, a bait and switch as far as still being in the simulation. If I would have bought into that, like if I didn't suspect that, I feel like I would have liked this episode more. But because it was so obvious and I didn't buy into it, it took away for the second half for me personally. What do you guys think about this episode? Comment and let me know. I just want to thank everyone for checking out this video. Thank you, subscribers. You guys are awesome. Welcome new subscribers. Continuing the Orville reviews here. Look forward to getting my review out next week. And yeah, just thank you everybody for checking this video out. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Yichu64, and I'll always tell you the truth.